now to kick off our international news, we've got a story from Fox here. It's about meteorologist Piers Corbyn beats out UK government experts. We're going to just show you a little clip here. This guy appears to have predicted that we're in a state of global cooling, and he pretty much rips to shred the false evidence that was used to build up the hysteric global warming agenda.
Back in November, the UK's government weather forecasting office claimed that this winter would be mild. That's the same office pushing a global warming agenda.
The winter, December to February, inclusive in Britain and Europe, will be exceptionally cold and snowy, like hell frozen over at times.
He was right. How did you manage to be so accurate?
Well, the science, so-called, of these scientists you referred to is failed science based on fraudulent data. We understand that it's the sun, solar particle and magnetic effects which control Earth's weather and climate, and we're able to predict this a long time ahead. So we predicted that this December would be the coldest for 100 years, which it has been, as it's shown on this, and we also predicted on the 12th of December that northeast and east USA would suffer the most horrendous blizzards for decades.
Because we're seeing global warming, that's why we're seeing such weather extremes. Do you buy that science?
No, it is complete nonsense. It's fiction. It comes from a cult ideology. There's no science in there, no facts to back them up. Historically, the only correlation between carbon dioxide and temperatures over millions of years is that world temperatures drive carbon dioxide levels, not the other way around. What they have is they fiddle the facts in order to justify political attacks, carbon trading, extra taxation, and in fact it is now closing up again in the Arctic, and the Antarctic has been cooling for the last 30 years. We are just past the peak of a world temperature rise, and we are now falling, and it's going to carry on falling in general for the next 25 years. And all these major extreme events around the world, the biggest ones such as the heat wave in Russia and the floods and the ending of the heat wave in Russia and the ending of the floods in Pakistan, were predicted by us using our solar magnetic theory, which you can find out more of on weatheraction.com, our website.
From the Telegraph, Himalayan glaciers not melting because of climate change, report finds. A new study put out by scientists from the universities of California and Protestan is contradicting the theory that glaciers in India and Pakistan are melting because of global warming. Published in the journal Nature Geoscience, it found that half of the glaciers in the Karakoram Range in the northwestern Himalaya are in fact advancing, and that global warming is not the deciding factor in whether a glacier survives or melts. The key factor affecting their advance or retreat is the amount of debris, rocks, and mud strewn on their surface, not the general nature of climate change. Glaciers surrounded by high mountains and covered with more than 2 centimeters of debris are protected from melting. Our environment does need a lot of cleaning up, and current practices need to be changed, but the only way to accomplish this is to change fundamentally the way our society operates, and to do that, people's mindsets first need to drastically change. This will not come about by paying CO2 taxes to a world government run by the power elite.
Hear, hear. From mangabay.com, Carnegie study reveres Genghis Khan for fighting global warming. This absurd piece is about Carnegie Institute's Department of Global Ecology publication stating that Genghis Khan's Mongol invasions cooled the planet, and thus he was an alright guy. Lead author Julia Pongratz says humans influenced the climate since the advent of agriculture and clearing forests for it. Pongratz believes high casualty levels allowed the areas to reforest and absorb more CO2. The ruthless slaughter of indigenous people, or what she calls the conquest of the Americas, was another positive occasion in Pongratz's eyes, apparently forgetting that we've deforested the entire country since. The Black Death and Ming Dynasty collapses weren't significant enough events, she says. I bet she just can't wait for the next massive body count. Who knows what this lady would do if she had superpowers? Captain Cull the Planet? Deforestation is driven by hemp prohibition, biofuels so-called environmentalists want as alternative fuels, massive coffee plantations, and other monocultures like soy. Deforestation desertifies areas also and ruins the soil. Dams help this process along too. FYI, Carnegie's fortune was invested in nonprofit tax-exempt foundations before the 1% tax for the rich was manifested into modern-day sharecropping via the IRS. Basically, his fortune and Rockefeller's are being used to wage a one-world elitist agenda by manipulating our education, history, and government.
From the Australian, climate change, long drought, uncovers a suggestion by a marketing company called Instinct and Reason to Australia's Agriculture Department that changing its language in regards to climate change may make it easier to convince the farm lobbies to accept paying carbon taxes. Preferred terms such as climate challenges, prolonged drought, and risk management are accepted, better understood, and more likely to motivate change, they said. I wonder how much was paid to this company with taxpayer money so that they could have a bunch of marketing demons tell them to lie and manipulate language to pass more taxes.
If anyone here is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself. Thank you, thank you. Thanks. Just a little thought. I'm just trying to plant seeds. Maybe one day they'll take root. I don't know. You try. You do what you can. Kill yourselves. Seriously, though, if you are, do. No, really. There's no rationalization for what you do, and you are Satan's little helpers, okay? Kill yourself, seriously. You're the ruiner of all things good. Seriously. No, this is not a joke. He's going to be a joke coming. There's no joke coming. You are Satan's spawn, filling the world with bile and garbage. You are and you are kill yourself. It's the only way to save your soul. Kill yourself. Quit putting a goddamn $sign on everything on this planet. We see that many people feel trapped. If we play to them and separate them into the trapped dollar, how do you live like that? I bet you sleep like babies at night, don't you? What'd you do tonight, honey? Oh, we made arsenic childhood food now. Good night. Yeah, we just said, is your baby really too loud? Yeah, the mums will love it, yeah. You're right! You're right! Not those who want to tell you how to think! You're right! Sorry, wrong meeting.
From energy from thorium, China initiates Thorium MSR project. This highlights a new form of nuclear technology, thorium-powered molten salt reactors. Thorium is cheap, compact, and 4 times more abundant than uranium. China has initiated a new research and development project and has mined enough thorium for hundreds of years, apparently. Uranium-232, a more impure form that can't be used for nukes, is needed just to start the reactor. China wants intellectual property rights on the technology, and the U.S. has no research and development on this, despite some efforts for what is paradoxically called green nuclear technology.
From the UK Daily Mail, have scientists discovered how to make downpours in the desert? Weather manipulation has been around for some time, but is only recently getting more play in the media. Scientists and companies have lately been admitting to altering the weather successfully. From China to Europe to the United States, now Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates has joined the club. It states scientists have been working secretly using giant ionizers shaped like stripped-down lampshades on steel poles to generate fields of negatively charged particles. These promote cloud formation, and researchers hoped they could then produce rain. In Abu Dhabi during the dry season last year, there were astoundingly 52 storms thought to have been induced by these experiments. The company running these ionizers is a Swiss company called Metro Systems International. They say that this technology is much cheaper than desalination for getting water and will be the wave of the future.
Yeah, we already have the HARP project here, so it doesn't sound like too unfamiliar technology. Also discussed in that mind control book we mentioned earlier. Now from Press TV, UN expert to be sacked for 9/11 remark. Criticizing the illegitimacy of the U.S. government's official account of 9/11 led to U.S. officials calling for the firing of Richard Falk, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Palestinian territories. Comments on his blog state that the media is complicit in, quote, an apparent cover-up for being, quote, unwilling to acknowledge the well-evidenced doubts about the official version of the events, an al-Qaeda operation with no foreknowledge by government officials. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, muttered some nasty adjectives about his remarks, but had nothing of substance to say in response. Most people don't believe the U.S. government on 9/11 either. Now from the UK Daily Mail, China, not a military threat, insists President as he urges U.S. to treat it as equal. As protesters demonstrated outside, Hu Jintao was criticized by politicians for policy on business, and trade practices, human rights, and aggressive military gestures. I assume business and trade refers to enslaving our country with debt for unnecessary products and currency manipulation. As for human rights, that would specify the occupation of Tibet, one-child policies, censorship, and other abuses. In my opinion, we shouldn't do business with China and must stop our dependence on cheap, environmentally degrading, and human slave goods, aka Walmart and Target junk. Of course, none of the protesters were interviewed, who were referred to as students, despite there being a diverse age group and obviously calling for Tibetan freedom. If you'd like to learn more about the brutal repression and cultural suffocation of Tibet, watch Tibet, Cry of the Snow Lion, free on Google Video or on our website, unstackingthedeck.com.
From Press TV, NATO blackmailing Russia with drugs. It has come out recently through a U.S. analyst named Jeff Steinberg from the Executive Intelligence Review that NATO is blackmailing Russia by asking for use of military supply lines and airspace in exchange for a reduction in the amount of heroin being shipped to their country. It is a major problem for Russia, where every year 100,000 Russians are dying from overdosing on heroin and opium coming out of Afghanistan. One major reason for the United States' presence in Afghanistan is to control the opium/heroin trade in a similar way that the cocaine trade is controlled in Colombia. This means that the drugs will flow freely and in increasing amount, while so-called anti-drug operations are conducted by the government and international forces and agencies. What is really happening is similar to the Iran-Contra affair, but with 20 years of corruption and a new drug trade added to it. That means that drug money is being used by various agencies, governments, and militaries to fund primarily black operations that are secret from congressional and parliamentary records on spending. These operations include assassinations, coups, abductions, torture, and false flag operations. There are numerous examples throughout history of empires trying to control populations through the drug trade, like the British East India Corporation's opium trade in China. FYI, this company's tea was disposed of during the Boston Tea Party of 1773, when real patriots walked the land.
Next, from Erbol Comunications and YouTube, a video of peasants, indigenous, and coca growers protesting peacefully outside the United States Embassy in La Paz defend coca chewing. Posted under the watchful gaze of police, people began to chew coca and show a diversity of products derived from the ancient blade, as well as medicinal uses. Originally, many plants that drugs are derived from were used by indigenous cultures for legitimate purposes, but have been perverted by the New World Order agenda, thereby demonizing cultures that have existed for thousands of years. Cannabis is yet another plant prohibited in order to serve nefarious agendas.
From Infowars.com, confirmed Stuxnet was false flag launched by Israel and U.S. Stuxnet is a computer virus that was created with military precision and deadly purpose. It states a number of computer scientists, nuclear enrichment experts, and former officials say the covert race to create Stuxnet was a joint project between the Americans and the Israelis with help from the Germans and the British. Adding to this, the target for this computer virus, Iran's nuclear facilities. This worm is designed to take over a system of 984 machines linked together and make the operators believe that everything is running normally while the centrifuges are actually spinning wildly out of control and could self-destruct. This could have been catastrophic and a real danger if there was a meltdown or explosion. Luckily, the Iranians averted such a problem, but did suffer a loss of 1/5 of their centrifuges. The virus is thought to have spread now to India, Pakistan, and possibly China. This was very irresponsible and downright evil on the part of those involved.
It's almost like a rite of passage for Iran that now that they have nuclear technology, they're able to avert being sabotaged like this. Got another story on it too from the New York Times. Israeli test on worm called crucial in Iran nuclear delay. This article investigates the virus's origins. Israel's Dimona complex, a secluded nuclear testing facility not acknowledged by the government, is allegedly where the Stuxnet worm was perfected, using a replica of Iran's nuclear facility, according to a confidential source, an American expert on nuclear intelligence. Mir Dagan, the retiring head of Israel's intelligence agency, the Mossad, boasted setting back Iran's nuclear ambitions years. The U.S. gives Israel billions in aid, by the way, more than any other country. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton referred to American-led sanctions inhibiting Iran. It turns out German-based Siemens disclosed the very security vulnerabilities exploited by Stuxnet to a U.S. Department of Energy lab. Gary Samore, Obama's WMD czar and CFR vice president, dodged a question on Stuxnet, but grinned, saying, "I'm glad to hear they were having troubles with their centrifuge machines, and the U.S. and the allies are doing everything they can to make it more and more complicated." It's What a disgusting person. The CIA has pushed the idea of studying other model centrifuge vulnerabilities, and both the CIA and Mossad have been implicated in the 9/11 attacks. Don't believe me? Watch Fabled Enemies, free online at Google Video or on our website, unstackingthedeck.com.
From Press TV, firms sold Israel torture instruments. It says a Danish-British security company has sold torture instruments to the Israeli prisons holding Palestinian inmates. The company's name is G4S, and they sell devices to the detention facilities, checkpoints, and even Jewish settlers. The increasing trend of well-publicized and accepted torture being conducted around the world should be a major concern to all people and must be condemned by any in this world who have some sense of morals and human values left.
Now from Press TV, 100 states back anti-Israeli resolution. Chief Palestinian Authority negotiator Saeb Erekat says a resolution against further encroaching Israeli settlement buildings in occupied territories would be supported by more than 100 countries. The resolution reiterates a previously existing UN call to halt building there. The growing occupation of Palestinian territory has undermined aspirations of independence since initial occupation over half a century ago.
From Reuters, Sarkozy takes G20 case to Obama as food prices soar. In a meeting between Obama and French President Nicolas Sarkozy, they have discussed many different moves that could happen in the future to help the global economic downturn and high price of food. Many of these proposals will be a threat to our national sovereignty or well-being, such as the idea for a global financial tax, global regulations, an international currency other than the dollar, and the rise of the Chinese yuan currency.
Now from SC Magazine, Egyptians turn to Tor to organize dissent online. As protest emerges in the Arab world, Tor, a proxy tool for anonymous internet usage, has been crucial for Egyptians to privately communicate and organize attempts to remove Western puppet Hosni Mubarak. Egyptians' Tor use increased 5 times before the internet was completely cut off. Egypt is a unique example of governments cutting off the internet to stifle dissent. Senator Jay Rockefeller is sponsoring an internet kill switch in the U.S., despite publicly condemning Egypt's government. WikiLeaks associate Jay Applebaum hopes Tor will enable Egyptians to, quote, stay safe against this violent tyranny. He was detained when re-entering the country from Egypt, his electronics confiscated and inspected with his papers copied. An unnamed Egyptian activist was also detained with his notes and diary confiscated. Actions speak louder than words, and the U.S. government gives Egypt the most aid, only second to Israel, together accounting for a third of total foreign aid by the U.S.
From Democracy Now! Digital Darkness, U.S.-UK companies help Egyptian regime shut down telecommunications and identify dissident voices. In an expose of the companies that have been helping the tyrannical Mubarak regime in Egypt identify protesters and shut down communications, British-based Vodafone shut down Egypt's phone and internet service. The American company called Naris, owned by Boeing, sold Egypt the surveillance technology that helped identify dissident voices. The American and British governments are already implicated in the crimes of the Egyptian government because of their large contributions of foreign aid, military, and diplomatic support. But to also have private corporations engaged in this type of collusion and totalitarian behavior is a frightening example of modern-day fascism.
Now from Computer World, without internet, Egyptians find new ways to get online. A group called We Rebuild works to provide free and private internet usage. Landline phones, dial-up internet, Morse code, faxes, and radio are some tactics used. Some mobile networks have been taken down, and only one ISP is in operation, Noor, which accounts for only 8% of the internet total. We Rebuild informs people how to use the web anonymously, and a peak of 3,000 requests per second for Tor resulted from their campaign. The article notes similar measures against internet use taken by governments in Nepal and Burma. Watch Burma VJ reporting from a closed country to see a successful attempt to get crucial information out during informational control and tyranny.
From Wired.com, internet kill switch legislation back in play, Republican Senator Susan Collins says that she will be reintroducing a bill that will allow for a so-called kill switch to be used by the president in a time of cyber emergency or attack. This is very worrisome considering what we have seen happen in Egypt, where communications for phones and internet were cut to quell footage of the revolution being spread across the world and to make it more difficult for activists in Egypt and their supporters in the rest of the world to communicate with each other.
From ISP Review, UK ISPs moot anonymous internet solution to circumvent new data and piracy laws. Swedish ISP Bahnhof, which hosts WikiLeaks, calls for virtual private networks to subvert the intrusive European Data Retention Directive. UK measures intend preventing free exchange of so-called intellectual property, but these methods are not effective, and 25% of the costs are to be footed by the ISPs to benefit copyright holders. VPN is not foolproof at ensuring privacy amidst the tactics by copyright fanatics, but there are other loopholes. Some ISPs believe VPNs paint a target on the ISP's back, and data would still be required accessible by the UK. One ISP representative says, quote, "Unfortunately, regardless of the technical issues involved, big government and big businesses are likely to get in the way. Governments love to control, and businesses want as much information about you as it can lay its hands on." Very true.
From the Globe and Mail, honey laundering, the sour side of nature's golden sweetener, is an in-depth story discussing ongoing investigations and trials concerning a massive fraud operation being conducted to smuggle honey from China into the U.S. Normally, Chinese honey would be subject to a range of tests, checks, and tariffs before it would be allowed onto the market. However, by using shell companies and other foreign countries, Chinese companies have been able to bypass many of these regulations and not only avoid paying millions in tariffs, but have also contaminated the American honey market with inferior product that is extremely cheap and sometimes toxic. This has created a very difficult situation for honey producers in this country.
Yet another reason why people should buy local, and also it's quite frightening too, a lot of times this honey that's sold in the market is just high fructose corn syrup, which is found to have mercury in it. Yeah, flavoring added and it's had mercury in it. Next, we've got Christian Science Monitor article on European nations begin seizing private pensions. This article proves how futile building a pension is, since governments, which often facilitate them, conveniently take the funds. As if higher taxes, price inflation, and low interest rates don't ruin savings enough, Hungary's people had 14 billion extorted from them. Bulgarians were also similarly robbed. Polish savers will lose 2.3 billion a year, and Ireland was jacked for 6.5 billion euros. Finally, in France, 33 billion euros are to be used early. The article concludes, quote, "It looks like although the governments are able to enforce general participation in pension schemes, they do not seem to be the best guardians of the money accumulated there." Maybe that's what part of the whole scheme is in the first place.
From the Telegraph, UK, a mother's fall causes her to lose her child. A woman in Britain has had her child taken away because she fell out of a window, was paralyzed, and had to spend time in the hospital. The woman's sister was taking care of the newborn while she healed. Despite this, social workers have given her child over to foster care instead of returning her to the mother. A sad example of an out-of-control state trying to take over families and individuals' lives.
Next up from Singularity Hub, Russia to adopt Universal ID card in 2012. Russians will be required to carry Universal Electronic Cards, which provide a central database to the government of everything from banking to medical records. Another version is being imposed in India, and Mexico may be next. The rationale behind this is to prevent fraud, they say, making buying stuff easier and other supposed benefits. The article author notes that such systems are, quote, "at best a short step ahead of criminal ingenuity." Many similar schemes are massively susceptible to privacy violations and data manipulations, not to mention the ease in which government surveillance can be conducted. Heck, maybe they could see something like you fell out of a window and take your child, as if that wasn't bad enough to happen to the poor lady.
Yeah, it's terrible. From ZDNet in Australia, national biometric pub list use explodes. In Australia, the use of biometric scanning at bars and clubs has been implemented widely. Now a new program where different venues can share information with each other about troublesome customers is taking off just as fast. Biometric data is used to analyze a person's walk, facial features, expressions, fingerprints, or other identifying characteristics to be used in conjunction with CCTV cameras and computers to key out certain individuals for investigation. This type of privacy-intruding activity taking place at bars and clubs is ripe for exploitation by criminals who would love to get their hands on all of those people's personal information. People should not submit to biometric data scans or any other forms of privacy intrusion.
Yeah, and actually biometric systems have been imposed in places like Fallujah after they bombed the hell out of the place. Some say it's a practice run for what they want to do.
Yeah, many of these systems that are being implemented now in our countries and in the West were first used in a lot of places where wars were going on previously, like the Middle East.
Yeah, and we are fighting National ID Act right now. So Next up, from The Australian, Europe and Japan threaten canceling contracts with Australia over GM contamination concerns. After Western Australia lifted a moratorium on GMO crops, specifically Monsanto Roundup Ready seeds, grains are already being tested for GM contamination spread by wind. The article notes that non-GM foods have a higher value and more markets eligible for sale. Swiss importer Agrotrace, Germany's Eurograin, and Norway's Holtermann warned Australia about strict European laws against such crops. The importers wrote, quote, "European consumers remain resolutely opposed to genetically modified crops, and as European importers, we must remain responsive to the needs of our customers." If there was more boycotting of products that are abominations, then the world would be a better place, in my opinion.
Yeah, from Mindanao News on more GMO news, actually. From the Philippines, UP Mindanao bows to City Hall and uproots BT eggplants. In a blow to GMO crops, the island of Mindanao in the Philippines has forced the company UP Mindanao to uproot a genetically modified crop of BT eggplant, quote, for reportedly failing to conduct consultations with the city and barangay governments. It was a victory to local farmers who were worried of cross-pollination to their crops from the GMO crops the company was planting.
More food news from Press TV. Energy drinks may harm public health. The legal limitations on caffeine and soda do not apply to energy drinks, and commentary in the Journal of the American Medical Association have called for immediate public awareness campaigns on the threat to public health. High blood pressure, sleeping issues, miscarriage, stillbirths, and pregnancy issues can result. I'm honestly not just troubled with the health issues, but the culture which promotes this cocaine-style and cane consumption.
From National News, in the UK, grandmother dies from swine flu soon after receiving swine flu vaccine. The article begins, a grandmother of 3 thought she was safe from swine flu after she had the vaccine months ago. Despite the step, she was rushed to the Royal Liverpool Hospital last week and later died. H1N1 swine flu was recorded as one of the main causes of her death. New flu vaccines are put out every year and advertised like there's no tomorrow, while increasingly evidence is mounting that these vaccines don't even help you and could in fact harm you in the end. This is another terrible example of the consequences of a medical system that is based more on profit than on actually trying to keep people healthy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. People become germaphobes and are worried about making contact or sharing pens or things like that when you're injecting something into your body and totally bypassing everything. Next up from Fox, fraud reportedly plagues global health funds. A tiny fraction of an audit of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria reveals astonishing corruption in the spending of billions of dollars. The fund is retracting or suspending millions in grants as a result. Forged paperwork and reselling of AIDS drugs in commercial market appear to be a routine crime. Some donors, like Sweden, are withholding tens of millions in annual donations to the fund. Congress has even critiqued the fund's reliance on grantees' self-reporting performance rather than ensuring the money is spent properly. Claiming to have saved nearly 15 million lives but with no real means of proving it, World Bank economist and senior fellow of the Brookings Institution, Homi Karas, says to focus on the positive the fund achieved, like the millions of people the drugs should have saved but most likely did not.
You want my people ball up your fist. Seem like it ain't no peace, no justice. How you want it? The bullet or the microchip. Either way, you got to lift your fist.
Worldwide famine. Ghetto people demanding that somebody do something soon. And let's examine the facts behind the violent attacks, behind the daily gunplay, the cocaine, and the crack.
Well, thank you for joining us on Unstacking the Deck. And we hope that you do go and look into these articles. Don't take our word for anything. Please don't believe us. In fact, it's better if you go read things for yourself because you will actually become more informed. And it'll probably shock you more than just having people tell you about it.
Yeah, so once again, go to our website, unstackingthedeck.com. Check it for regular updates on content. We're going to keep it going so that way you can continually visit and always learn something mind-blowing about what's happening in this world that the powers that be would not want you to learn about. In the meantime, we're actually going to be working on a documentary project called Tasers Gone Wild, and hopefully you'll love it. We're going to put some of our energies towards that project. We've already got footage lined up for that. But in the meantime, until the next show and our next documentary, you can do your part and keep unstacking the deck.